don't be surprised if we start seeing some full runs around sooner than that. So
Yeah.
we can move it.
All right, moving on to, thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the superintendent report.
You find a letter of agreement. It's a very simple letter of agreement in our packet, but under the new law, layoff and recall is a prohibited bargaining subject, although our contract still had that outlined within the contract, so we got together, made a quick letter of agreement that said it was prohibited bargaining, and that we would follow board policy and state law, which leads us into the second one, is then we needed a board policy to cover layoff and recall, since it was no longer part of the contract. And so you remember, the state law says the first part of a layoff would be the evaluation. So it wouldn't matter your seniority, it wouldn't matter whether you were tenured or non-tenured. So we looked at some policies, and we worked on, pulled some things together for a policy to bring to you for a first reading. In the essence of this is that obviously the evaluation would be the first line of layoff. The evaluation would not be the raw score, but the rating instead. So in other words, we all know that can be put down, anybody that worked on the committee, you've seen the evaluation, it can be put down to a number. The number would not be, because we felt if someone was effective, how do you differentiate between an 87 and an 88? You know, so we looked at, first of all, the ratings. Then we looked at the ratings within the individual categories. For example, it's possible to be effective but still have a minimally effective rating in one of the categories. So that would be the next criteria for the second tiebreaker. Most districts that we looked at are going to two. They're going to evaluation and then seniority. We put a third one in there. Seniority would be the third tiebreaker. The fourth tiebreaker in this, if there was one opening and two people laid off, and all the other criteria was equal, it would be based on superintendent's discretion of what was the best educational situation for the district. So that's the essence of what it is. We will need to do this because if we were under the budget to have a layoff this year, we would need a policy that would dictate that layoff vote. We need to go through that. So that's the first two. Any questions before I move on to the enrollment? As you can see, the enrollment has dropped a little bit, but it's stayed pretty stable. It's pretty typical that this time of year we do drop a little bit, but it hasn't dropped as much as what it is in the past. In fact, our enrollment has stayed pretty steady. We're pretty happy about that. And when you're talking enrollment, if you think about kindergarten roundup, which is tomorrow and the next day, last I heard we had about 93, was it, Loretta?
95 or 96, wasn't it?
95 or 96 kindergartners that are registered for kindergarten roundup. Typically, we gain another 10 or 11. Now, keep in mind, some of those 95 are doing some shopping. So, we might, the school of choice, some do shopping, we might not get all those, but history shows that we get the majority of those ones that come through kindergarten roundup. And so, you throw another 10 on there, it would be a pretty healthy number of incoming kindergartners, which is nice. 2 classes back to back that could potentially be over 100. Loretta and I looked. We are running real steady to our percent of school of choice of those incoming kindergarten students too. It was what, about 20%?
20%.
20% of them are school of choice, which is nice to know that school of choice is, we're a school of choice for that many students coming into kindergarten. So those are our enrollment numbers, and the good thing about the next couple days at the elementary and kindergarten.
How does that relate, how does kindergarten roundup relate to the outgoing class, senior class?
We're, right now, when you throw the exchange students in, we're about 110, 112, I think it is, in the senior class. And that was, I looked at those numbers it was about a month ago I looked at those numbers. They might be down a little bit now.
That's pretty close,
And
actually.
it's gonna be real close, Mr. Rogers.
That was Andy. It's just not a voice coming out of the wall.
So it's real
So
close.
it's compared.
Right, and actually it's a little bit more because in that senior class going out are the exchange students.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're bringing in more of our own students than what we are graduating out, so, which is a nice thing. If you've been following the ever-changing news on budget in the state of Michigan, I spent some time with Tina today, and really our best guess that we can do is kind of hold pat for another week or two, because we don't know what's coming out. If you looked at the Senate version, the Senate actually is suggesting an increase to the foundation allowance for schools that are getting the max of $104 to schools that are getting the minimum, which was $208. I believe we would be in the $208 dollar increase per foundation grant per student if the Senate one came out. The House one is in a different version. They're all different than what the governor proposed. So it's very difficult to try to figure out what we're looking at budget-wise. Everybody I've talked to is a little bit of a holding pattern right now, because you don't want to make a rash decision based on what you think the information's going to be. We're going to get to the point in another couple weeks that we're going to have to start making those decisions. I believe the governor picked a May date for a budget. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was in the May date, Eric, you might have heard that, for a budget, so that would help us. Part of that we don't know about is there are two other things in the budget possibility that could affect us. One is, they're still looking at shifting the incoming kindergarten age back. That's still on the table. Full-day kindergarten is still on the table, which doesn't affect us. It affects a lot of schools out there. Does not affect us, because we already have full-day kindergarten. In fact, I go to every superintendent's meeting I go to, they say, how are you gonna deal with full-day kindergarten? I said, we dealt with that 15
Done.
years ago.
Done.
And they said, really? Why? And I look at it and says, because we felt that was the best educational thing for the students. They walk away from me at that point because they don't have anything to say. But if they shift that back to November 1st as opposed to December 1st, potentially 5 or 6 students less than we could have, which would impact budget, okay? Another thing that's out there is if the retirement, not incentive, but the retirement system is changed, it will cut the amount that, as a district, we have to pay into the retirement, which again will then have an impact on our budget. The third thing that I just got some information on today is that a neighboring district that has the same insurance type that we do, their insurance increase came in at 7%. We looked at a best case scenario of 11%. So our cost on our insurance that we projected could be a little bit higher. Now that district, remember all districts are different, but we're thinking that's a positive thing for our district too. So which then could cut our costs a little bit. So if the retirement system is changed and the insurance comes in a little bit lower, that could have a positive impact on our budget. Now when when that insurance change, it's not gonna be a positive impact on our employees' pocket because they're gonna have to pay more.
They're paying, yeah.
So the short answer to the budget is we're on hold for a little while until we get some more information. We feel, I'm talking to Tina and talking to administrators, we feel that we're about 75 to 80% done with what we had. So we're not that far off. But we didn't want to make some cuts that we didn't have to make if the numbers came in a little bit better. So that's where we are. I just wanted to keep you informed on where that was. If anybody wants to see a version of what the Senate and the House came out, I do have a copy of that if anybody wants to see it. ISD Special Ed and Student Data Software Consortium Agreement will be coming to you for a motion in May for an agreement to move into the consortium with the ISD. We do not currently have a special ed software package. This will put all our special ed information in one location on a computer. It'll make doing the IEPs much easier. In fact, I worked with the one down in Jackson County. I was in Jackson County, and it does make the IEPs much easier to go through as you're going through it. Kathleen, anything you want to say about the special ed portion of it?
I don't think so. Just that the management of the caseload and monitoring activity will be much easier to do from an internet standpoint.
You're happy with the software package?
Very. I was part of the county core team that
Okay.
investigated. I was actually the special education chairperson.
Oh, awesome.
So,
I'm sorry.
It says they will take the place of data director.
Yeah, what, the student data, and that's what I was gonna talk to you now, software will take the place of data director, but this was developed by the people that developed data director. They are telling us we're the only district in the ISD that should have a seamless transition into this because we still have data director. Most of the other ones are in Pearson and Forum. Our information will pull out and work in this. Pearson and Forum, they say, well, we don't know what it's gonna do. But I didn't really listen too much to how that was gonna
Our
happen.
stuff will automatically
Yeah.
upload.
Okay, so we're not gonna lose anything,
No.
because
no.
when we did this, what,
5 years ago.
5 years ago,
Yeah, from Pearson and Forum
Yeah.
data.
you know, all the time and effort spent, we
Um,
lost all that data.
No, they've guaranteed us that we will not leave data, or lose data, and they've actually said that this is going to be very user-friendly, much more qualified, much easier to use than data director, so, you know, I think the teachers are beginning to get comfortable with data director, and that was my one concern with this, and I talked to the ISD about this. We're finally getting comfortable, we're finally using data director, now you're asking us to switch, and I know the switch was for the good with the special ed package, but I said, that really concerns me, should I maintain data director too? And they said, definitely not. They said, they've guaranteed that they'll make sure that the draw is taken care of completely for us, the draw of data. It will actually cost us less to have this one in data director, when you look at the consortium cost. So, the ISD has set aside, some money for this, and so our portion is gonna be less than what we pay for data director. So it's gonna be a small, not a lot, but a small savings in some money.
So essentially, we get all of the services that we had previously with data director, and we have the special education services on top of it, and it saves us money.
and there's a third tier also that is currently in development. It is a curriculum piece that will tie, and it already ties with Ames Web, Power School, and the state reporting sites. So everything will be in one place for each teacher, and they can customize their desktop to how they use those programs.
Do they anticipate an additional cost when that
No,
rolls out? Or is
Absolutely
that
not.
part
That
of
is
this
all part of the
package?
agreement. It was initially intended to be a 3-tier piece,
Okay.
special ed assessment, and then the RTR, the MTSS piece as well. They have some, will be, actually, when it rolls out, one of the first in the country to use it.
One of the unique, or one of the neat, I wanna say neat things about this, is now a teacher that uses data director has to go to a scanner and scan it in. With some of our newer,
Document cameras.
document cameras, they'll actually be able to scan them in their classroom right underneath the document cameras. So a student can take a test, come up and scan it in, and get immediate feedback on the test right from the classroom. So that's really nice.
So how many of our classes have the documents?
Not, but we are getting,
All of them in the elementary, Roger.
Thank you, PTO.
The ones in the elementary are all capable of this with an additional piece of software installed, which is not a cost to us, it's just an upgrade that needs to be done with that feature. I think at the middle school, I wanna say, we're probably, right now, about 40% of your classrooms have one. And then, the number is, every year, the number improves, because it's something that we're dedicated to improving. And up here, there's a couple, the high school probably has the least number, but
Something
so
that needs to
every
be
year,
worked
every year
on.
we buy, buy a few more,
And we just purchased
well, more-ish.
with title money. Um, Great. So that ends our reports.
Thank you. Moving on to board discussion and/or action. Item A, we have the extension of the ISD Business Services contract or agreement. This is a motion that the business services agreement entered into by and between the ISD and Leslie Public Schools shall be extended for 1 year through June 30th, 2013.
Support.
Moved by James, was that Erica?
Yes.
Supported by Erica. That the business services agreement entered into by and between the ISD and Leslie Public Schools shall be extended for 1 year through June 30th of 2013. Is there any discussion?
I'm just curious of, what kind of a plan we have going forward to decide what we're gonna do in this next year, when we're gonna start, do you have any idea?
Well, I think
Talked
when we,
about it, I don't wanna
when we,
throw it out.
yeah, no, that's fine. When we discussed this, at the workshop, we talked about trying to look and implement, not implement, but looking at something ready to implement summer, early fall, and that's
Okay,
still the
that's
plan.
still the plan.
Still the plan to do that. As I told you, when we talked with Eaton Rapids, they were willing to wait a year. So they were fine with taking a look and answering some of the questions we had this summer and early in the fall. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how practical it's gonna be to do over the summer between the different, trying to pull people's schedules together during the summer, so it's a little bit harder. But it'll be, in
We're gonna
August,
start right away then,
in
the
August and
fall,
September.
looking at what we're gonna do. then.
July might be tough, but August and September will be reasonable to pull the players together and start looking at it. That doesn't mean that that's our best solution. Well, I'm gonna continue to look for other options also.
Because one of the things I really wanted to know was position descriptions, what the people did prior, what all of our
And we'll,
folks, that, I really think that would help.
and we'll pull all that together and have that.
But we could discuss that this summer too. We could do that this summer too, discuss that.
Okay. No,
Or
that's-
even the additional options, that we can look at.
Can I point out two things? One, this is a 1 year, which gives us the time to figure out what else we wanna do. We have to make a move on it by April 1st next year, because in fairness to the ISD, they need to know what we're gonna do so they can do staffing for themselves for next year. And the other thing is, as I discussed, this does bring in, the additional is it brings in 8 hours a week of ISD support into our district. Janet Yakima are gonna talk about what that support is going to look like, because both of us, I think, have our own idea what it's gonna look like, and I'm not sure that our ideas match. So we will come to an agreement on how that works.
And that will include working out the kinks with the HR stuff as well.
A lot of it, probably the majority of the 8 hours will be spent with HR stuff to begin with, because we have some real disconnect with the HR that needs to be taken care of, so.
So essentially, this is, the 1 year opportunity to extend this to give us the more time to continue the discussions of what we really want to do as a permanent solution for our finances. And then same cost to the district. The extra is that we have the additional 8 hours in district that we are currently not receiving. So.
It was good of ISD to not try to song and do it 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
To work with.
Yeah.
So this is moved by James, supported by Erica, that the business services agreement entered into by and between the ISD and Leslie Public Schools shall be extended for 1 year through June 30th, 2013. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The next item is to approve the new reduction and recall of teachers policy, which is the first reading in enclosure 2. This is a motion that the Board of Education approve the first reading of a new board policy, reduction and recall of teachers as outlined in enclosure 2.
I'll move.
Moved by Deanne,
Support.
supported by John, that the Board of Education approve the first reading of a new board policy reduction and recall of teachers as outlined in enclosure 2. Is there any discussion?
I just, you know, we have this agreement that was signed, but the policy, they didn't sign over about the policy, they just signed recognizing the
Because
law.
Within the
they-
context.
They would not sign the board
Right,
policy.
right, okay,
And this is state law.
But they have seen the policy.
yes, okay, all right, thank you.
And this is state law has now
Yeah.
said that we have to
do
have
this,
some type
yes.
of policy. Okay, so this is moved by Deanne, supported by John, that the Board of Education approve the first reading of a new board policy, reduction and recall of teachers as outlined in enclosure 2. Is there any other discussion?
I just didn't want it to be a surprise, but.
Fair, that's, appreciate your concern. All those in favor? Item C, you'll see item C and D are for overnight forensics trips. The first one is a motion to approve an overnight trip to Western Michigan University, May 4th and 5th, 2012, per the recommendation of high school principal Andrew Rogers.
Support.
Moved by John, supported by Bud, to approve an overnight trip to Western Michigan University, May 4th and 5th, 2012, per the recommendation of high school principal Andrew Rogers. Is there any discussion? I just appreciate again you bringing it for us in a timely manner so that we can vote on it. All those in favor? Any opposed? And the second overnight trip, this is a motion to approve an overnight trip to Mackinac Island on May 18th through the 20th, 2012 for the forensics team per the recommendation of high school principal Andrew Rogers.
I'll move.
I'll support.
Moved by Deanne, supported by Mary, to approve an overnight trip to Mackinac Island, May 18th through the 20th, 2012 for the forensics team per the recommendation of high school principal Andrew Rogers. Is there any discussion?
Is this a qualifying one? Is this the one that was?
This is a,
Invitation.
invitation. This is, so it's, I can say that, side note, I was a little leery about this one because for the last 10 years, my wife and I have attended a conference for that same weekend. And look, I'm laughing back there, on Mackinac Island. We are registered to be at a conference this same weekend, and Mackinac Island is the forensics team. Now, I wasn't worried about bringing it over nice, maybe I can stop in and see somebody perform.
No, it is the, to advantage of the word, even to.
Well,
There's some scouting,
did you mention that was
there's some
a
scouting
conference?
events, there's some scouting events
Oh,
going
not
on too.
Up there?
Reenactments, yes.
That weekend?
I tracked down to see what date you guys would be up there, because I was going to go. And,
Canceled it.
well, a kid, one of our ex-students is getting married that weekend. Well, I would go. I think it's wonderful.
I will say that, I was in forensics in high school, really enjoyed it, and I was not able to go, to this invitational, so this is a great opportunity for the kids. I am slightly jealous and nostalgic,
I probably heard they
but
did a board
thank you for
chaperone.
bringing that. Okay, so, this is a motion, it's moved by Dan, supported by Mary, to approve an overnight trip to Mackinac Island, May 18th through the 20th, 2012, for the forensics team per the recommendation of high school principal Andrew Rogers. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Item E is to hire a .5 varsity assistant football coach in enclosure 4. This is a motion that the Board of Education hire Chris Bonsteel as .5 varsity assistant football coach per the recommendation of athletic director Scott Kuzanoff.
I'll move.
Moved by John, supported by James. That the Board of Education hire Chris Bonsteel as .5 varsity assistant football coach per the recommendation of athletic director Scott Kuznow. Is there any discussion?
Yes. Is this what the staff wanted to continue with to halftime?
And this is the, His
Rob
name's
Smith.
Rob Smith, yes, the name slipped my mind, but yes, Rob Smith. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Item F, all of it?
I agree with that.
If this can be tabled, I would do that.
Okay. Should we do the table number one?
Number F.
Yeah.
Well, number
F1.
F1.
How do I do that?
I believe you have to make a
Make
motion
a motion to table,
and then it'd have to be,
seconded and voted on.
So do I do that now?
Mhm.
So I'd like to make a motion to, table the,
F1.
F1.
What are we tabling it for, Mayor?
Because I think, we talked about, sharing services with Beaton Rapids. I believe there's a number left that we need to, we don't need, need halftime special ed director, and I think it just needs further discussion.
But extending her contract has nothing to do if we cut the time involved. If we
It
cut
will
the
still,
position.
her contract is still valid until, next year, June of next year. This just extends it from
I understand
2013 to 2014.
But it does nothing in terms of, if you cut a position to have time, that has nothing to do with her contract anyhow.
Well, there's some of us that just wanted to discuss this.
Well, when you say some of us, who are you discussing this with outside of?
No, I would like to table it. I would like to table it. If there's no support, then we won't. If there's no support to table it, then we won't do it.
So this is a motion moved by Mary, to table F1. Is there support?
Well, just to clarify, her contract's good for 2014, so it's not gonna,
No,
No.
it's good to 2013.
2013.
So
This
is
extends it to 2014. But if there's no support, then there's no support. I'm just making a motion to table it.
So is there any support to table the F1?
I'll support it.
So moved by Mary. Supported by James to, table F1 to a future meeting.
How does
What-
that?
I was saying,
I don't
well, how's
know
that
what
work?
the
What-
wording would be.
well,
Deanne's got a question.
Yeah, I just asked how it works, what happens if we table it, what happens?
we would have to,
Would it come up in May then?
We'd
Would
have
it
to
come
bring,
back up on the agenda? in
we'd
May?
have to bring it back, and maybe we'd have to discuss it at the
Workshop.
workshop, and bring it
Okay.
back in May. So, just, the, if we table it, we bring it back in May, we talk about it, but again, as John said, it doesn't, I'm trying to word this so it makes sense. It doesn't affect, this halftime would not affect necessarily the length of the contract.
Cause if we chose to go half-time, that would nullify this contract. Is that right?
It would,
I believe so.
it would alter, yes.
Because when we did that with Connie Smith, it changed her contract.
If that became part of a operating agreement with another district, then we'd have to alter, we wouldn't necessarily alter the contract because of the way that we were going to look at establishing that was that the position would be our contracted position, they'd reimburse us back for costs. So it wouldn't be in essence, it wouldn't be a halftime.
It would still be our full-time employee, we would share the cost.
Sure, yes, we would bill them for cost, based on the percent of time that position was out of our district.
Well, Jeff, this question is for you. We did principals last week, and I asked you point blank, were you recommending that we move forward with those principals? Are you recommending that we move forward and this is done?
We need to move forward on the position, yes.
And I'm glad we have our newspapers here, because I hope you're recording all of this. If we elect to go to halftime, I hope you let every parent out there that has a special needs child know just how this board is approaching this.
So we have, a motion that's moved by Mary and supported by James to table, F1, the contract extension of Kathleen Dopp to a future meeting. Is there any discussion?
Have we gotten any of the, evaluations back?
Again, we're working on the evaluations, but we still, with this position, there has to be a student, achievement position. And I'm talking about the position, because that's,
So is there a timeframe in which, with all of these positions, when those might be completed, with
This
that
is-
information?
This is the only.
this
This
is
is
the
the
only.
only- okay, I'm sorry.
the student
Well, why
achievement.
does this one have to be voted on before we get the evaluations back?
Because with the timeframe within, the agreements of contracts, administrator contracts have certain timelines that have to be met.
But
And-
she's good till next year?
So would we be in violation then of that time frame if we waited, I guess? I guess that's.
You would not be in violation of the timeframe if you waited for the position for,
If we did the table and waited till May or
Till
whatever,
we got the evaluations.
we would not be in violation of the time because her contract doesn't expire until the end of June, right?
that's
But,
correct.
Of next year, not this year.
but, isn't there the, and I could be totally wrong on this, but don't the contracts have a clause where if we don't move by a certain date, that they automatically extend?
That's
So-
the way they do it.
Yeah, but this contract is good until June of 20, or
13.
12, or till 2013.
And what it says is the board no later than May 1st of each year during the term of a contract may extend the contract for an additional one-year period. In exercising this option also, the board also shall establish an annual salary, which we've done. All other terms and conditions of the contract shall remain unchanged, which is, the only thing we're changing is the date. By operational law, unless the board gives written notice of non-renewal of this contract, the administrator less than 60 days before the contract's termination date, which is technically,
Next year.
Next
Because
year.
remember, we went through this before.
the contract will, without further action, be automatically renewed.
Mhm. One more thing, and then we can continue discussion and then take the vote, about the student achievement piece, though, that we talked at the last meeting when we were, renewing the principles that also required student achievement data, that this is kind of the unique year, because it's the first year that we have to include that, so we don't have the data at this time to include with the principals' contracts, we don't necessarily have the data at this time to include with the special education director, but the data that we're collecting right now is going to allow us to have a baseline for future contracts and future years for that student achievement piece. Because right now, most of the people in the state don't have that because of the way that the law was written and not having enough time to gather everything.
So if we tabled this though, could we look at the rest of the review without that data?
We could at that time.
And there's no rush because it's not within the 60-day time period. We can just wait until the data comes in.
But we also did have it looked at the ones from the principals. So I'd like to know what makes this situation any different than the principal. Other than I have a feeling that some board members are discussing this without
I just
doing
believe,
it in an open forum. You have been against this position ever since we filled it. Yes, you
I
have.
just only believe we need a half-time position.
And then you say that to the 189
I just
people
believe
that
we
have
need a
children.
half-time
John,
position.
let's not.
It's not your position to tell me anything. I will speak what I want to say when it
And
comes to
John,
special ed. Special ed. So if we're going to have this conversation, let's be honest about it. You have been against this position being full-time since it was incorporated. Yes, you
I believe
have.
we just need a half-time position. I
And
do
what do you,
believe that.
how do you defend
I do
those
believe
special needs children
I
for the
just
halftime?
believe we need a half-time position.
And she has been consistent in the fact that
I've
she
always
has
said
said
that, John.
that she has a halftime.
It isn't that
I'm
we
not
don't
saying
need
that
a
I agree
special
with
ed
it,
director, I
but-
just believe we need a half-time position.
and we can, if this motion passes, we can discuss that option. The only thing that, about that option though, is that we have tabled all of our discussions with, Eaton Rapids and sharing services and things like that, because we didn't feel like we had enough time to implement that right now. I still am in, the agreement that we don't have enough time to move forward with changing this to a halftime position for this year. I'm open to having discussions as we are with the, financial services to maybe include this as a halftime for next year, but for right now, if the idea is that we table it until the May workshop, we discuss it at the May workshop, I still don't think that we have enough time, to change it for next year.
I don't think we're really looking at next year, this is looking at extending it through 2014. I'm not sure that we're looking at 2013.
Well, I think you are. I think you very seriously are.
Well,
And
I
think
can
we
guarantee you I'm not,
I don't mean
so.
you.
You can't change the position for this year, it would only be for next year,
We
possibly.
can't change the position
No.
for 2012, 13.
12, 13, it's
Um,
already established.
Whether we vote on extending this, or whether you vote on extending this, we can throughout that time change it in the second year of the agreement.
Well, my thing is I don't wanna rush into any contract a year ahead. I wanna look at an evaluation, we have time to do that. What's the rush? There's no rush.
Then
I
should we
mean, it
table
seems to be a little bit heated right now. Let's table it, look at it, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
With that logic though, that's the same thing for every single one of these contracts. it
And that's
goes-
what I wanted to do last month. I
And-
wanted to look at evaluations.
And it goes back to the direction that the board has taken, that we're trying to put our, employees on 2-year contracts for job security, budgeting reasons, all of the litany that we had talked about before. So I mean, we could either do this for all of them, we can do this for one of them. Frankly, I'm in the mindset that, we vote on all of them tonight. I think that we have the information that we need for these individual votes and then, or these individual contracts for these positions, and then we talk about whatever we need to at the next workshop and get that discussion started.
I can withdraw, tabling that, I just think we should discuss this.
I think we take a vote
We
because
should
there's,
discuss it.
a motion that's on there that's, moved by Mary, supported by James. I'm sensing that there's other, support as well. I'm just saying that I don't think that it's necessary personally, but again, I'm just one vote on the.
We didn't do this option with the principals last time around. And we honored your suggestion that you put these contracts forth as our superintendent, your recommendation. Because I very clearly asked that. And I think you made it very clear that you're putting this position forward tonight, and I think Eric's correct. I think we need to get an up or down vote on these people, so.
Is it a question about a part-time special ed director, or is it a question about the person we have in there? I guess,
And we.
is that what the
can't-
evaluation is
we can't
weighted on?
We can't discuss that without a closed session, with
Okay.
that person being in the closed session, if they request it.
So we have, the motion that's moved by Mary, supported by James to table, the contract extension F1, for a future meeting. Is there any other discussion?
And as Mary said, she can withdraw hers, and we can still put it on as a discussion item at another meeting.
So would those evaluations be ready for another meeting? With or without the?
In May, everything would be, because the student achievement data will not be done until late May. But at our, first meeting in May, everything but the student achievement data will be
So we could have those,
Yes.
everything but.
For the workshop, though.
for the workshop.
And that would be for all of the administrators.
But we're just discussing currently Kathleen's because there's no hurry on hers, because she's past the 60-day limit. We would have to, well, none of these, contracts contracts are up, so.
No,
One is.
Cindy Farley's.
Cindy Farley.
Cindy Farley's has to be voted on.
So-
I'm sorry, as I said earlier, it doesn't, you can vote on it, and we can still discuss it.
We can vote on,
Table it.
Well,
I can withdraw the table and we can vote on this and discuss it.
and then we could at a later date discuss the merit of,
a halftime position.
as you posed the question, a halftime position.
But how, if there's concern with the evaluation on any of these, then I guess that's what I'm looking at it from.
That's what I'm saying.
If there's a concern with the evaluation and we approve them,
The
I
process,
understand
the
that.
process would still be the same next year, because you have to act within a certain amount of time. At that point, you would be bound to act within a certain amount of time, or else the contract would be extended. And you would have to act with just cause.
I guess,
You could pull back, is what you're saying?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What I think Eric is concerned about is if we vote on it and agree to it, we're locked into that for another year, correct? And what you're saying is we're not necessarily locked.
Not necessarily locked into
Okay.
this. With,
Just cause.
yeah, so,
I guess my concern is that if you extend it to 2014 and there's gonna be a discussion on whether or not it's a half-time or full-time position in 2014, why would you extend a full-time position through 2014 not knowing whether or not that would be half-time or full-time? That's just my thought, and I think that's kind of a false premises of saying, oh yeah, we're gonna approve it a full-time position through 2014, but yeah, we're gonna have a discussion about that.
Is that fair to Kathleen?
Right, that's my
And you're
With-
doing the
question.
exact opposite of giving them the 2 year, you've got 2 years here. Oh, you've got 2 years here, but we're discussing.
But we're gonna discuss whether that's,
Right, so.
without being able to see the future, next year, with the transition to a different software package and all the other things that we have going on with special ed, it is going to be more for next year than a half-time position for next year. I can't see out, 2 years in the future, as to where that would be. But with the new transition that we're gonna do, it will be, the need for a full-time position at least next year.
Which we currently have in place.
Right.
right, right.
I just think we need to discuss it. I just think we really need to discuss it. And I can hold the table. I just wanna discuss it at a workshop, that's all.
Well, I mean, I think that, the motion is out there, regardless of whether we table it or if we don't, we can still discuss it either way. So I think that we, vote on the motion to table it, unless you want to withdraw it, but it sounds like there might be some support. So it's up to you, it's your motion.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. So we have, again, the motion that is, moved by Mary and supported by James to table, F1, which is the extension of, the special education director's contract, to table it to a future meeting. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so this is, you're voting in favor of tabling. All those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So the motion passes, so we are tabling F1, to a future meeting. Moving on to F2, This is a motion that the Board of Education approve a one-year contract extension, 230 days per year, to Troy James as Leslie Public Schools Transportation Director / Working Maintenance Supervisor, which would extend his contract to June 30th, 2014.
Support.
Moved by Bud, supported by John, that the board approve a one-year contract extension, 230 days per year, to Troy James as Leslie Public Schools Transportation Director / Working Maintenance Supervisor, which would extend his contract to June 30th, 2014. Is there any
Do
discussion?
we have anything else to your title?
Sorry.
Bus
it is-
driver.
we'll go ahead.
Bus
Bus
driver.
driver, I caught him driving the bus the other day.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? This is F3. This is a motion that the board approve a one-year contract extension, 210 days per year, to Kristen Hawkins as Leslie Public Schools Food Service Director, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014.
Support.
Moved by Deanne, supported by John, that the board approve a one-year contract extension, 210 days per year, to Kristen Hawkins as Leslie Public Schools Food Service Director, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? This is F4. This is a motion that the board approve a one-year contract extension, 220 days per year, to Tamara Dodge as Leslie Public Schools Technology Director, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014.
I'll move.
I'll support.
Moved by John, supported by Bud, that the board approve a one-year contract extension, 220 days per year, to Tamara Dodge as Leslie Public Schools Technology Director, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014. Is there any discussion?
I'd just like to say, I'm gonna vote no, because I think we need to look at this area, and I'm happy with it through the 2013, but I'd like to look at it again at 2013 versus extending it through 2014. I'd like to look at the whole way we do technology departments.
So this is a motion that the board approve a one-year contract extension, this is moved by John, supported by Bud, that the Board of Education approve a one-year contract extension, 220 days per year, to Tamara Dodge as Leslie Public Schools Technology Director, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails.
What was the comment there?
3, 4, and I want to make sure that I have this correct,
You
so,
said passed.
no, it was motion failed.
Okay.
So the yeas for John, Eric, and Bud, is that correct?
Correct.
And then the nays are, okay. F5 is a motion that the Board of Education approve a one-year contract extension, 230 days per year, to Loretta Vince as Leslie Public Schools Executive Secretary, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014.
I'll move.
Support.
Moved by Deanne, supported by John, that the board approve a one-year contract extension, 230 days per year, to Loretta Vince as Leslie Public Schools Executive Secretary, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Item F6, this is a motion that the board approve a 2-year contract extension, 230 days per year, to Cindy Farley as Leslie Public Schools State Reporting / Data Specialist, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014.
I'll move.
Support. Okay.
Moved by Deanne. Who supported?
Bud.
Bud, okay, sorry. Thought I heard a couple people
You did, we were scared.
Alright, so,
It was a bud job.
moved by Deanne, supported by Bud, that the board approve a 2-year contract extension, 230 days per year, to Cindy Farley as Leslie Public Schools State Reporting / Data Specialist, which would extend her contract to June 30th, 2014. Is there any discussion?
I'm just really happy as a district that we added this position, because I think it's very valuable, and I think we're seeing that more and more as the data gets out to our administrators and out to our teachers, that this is gonna be a very valuable position for us.
With all the state requirements
Right,
too.
right, and all the reporting that we have to do, and
So
Did,
this,
who all picked up the packet that she did for us? Was that not wonderful or what? The things that's available in this district class-wise